Today is going to be a fun one because for the first time, I'm going to be firing up my new SnS Grills Kettle. And to try it out, I'm going to season up some amazing Wagyu beef ribs, grill them up, and have a taste of this amazing beef. Yeah, so it's going to be fun today. My first cook on the SnS Grills Kettle that I bought just a few weeks ago, put it together, and this is sort of a preview test of it. It's not a full review, but I'll talk about some of the features of it. I did a burn-in yesterday and did a little testing, but cooking is the real test, so let's get to that. First thing, we got to get our rub together. I know I've said I like to stay at 5 ingredients, but this one has 6, just a little bit of a 6th ingredient. We're going to start with a tablespoon of a coarsely ground black pepper, a tablespoon of paprika, a tablespoon of brown sugar. Now you may be asking yourself, why are you putting sugar in a beef rub? Well, I've put sugar in beef rubs before and I like it. It mellows out some of the more biting flavors like that pepper without wiping it out completely. We're also going to add a teaspoon of kosher salt, a teaspoon of granulated garlic, and a teaspoon of chili powder. I'm using a dark chili powder. It's a blend from the store. Just pick your favorite chili powder, dial it up or dial it down depending on how much heat you want. Give this just a quick stir. So any lumps of brown sugar, just break them up. Gonna get our lid on and give it a quick shake. There we go. Let's get our beef ribs out here. So here we have our Wagyu bone-in beef ribs. These are what are called beef chuck short ribs. It's the full plate. The bones are running this way. And if you can see, that marbling is terrific. Just wonderful. Now this was sent to me by my friends over at Wagyu. It's a family-run ranch in Texas. All their beef is pasture-raised, hormone-free. They have sent me beef a number of times over the last several years. It's always terrific, and they always give me a coupon code that people can use if they want to buy something there. I'll put a link in the video description so you can use that coupon code if you want to. Coupon code is CWR, and at this time that will get you 10% off. Always check and see what a coupon code gets you whenever you get it, because sometimes over time things change. You could be watching this video in a year or 2 years and it could be different. So let's go ahead and get this rubbed up. Now the first thing I want to do is I just want to take a quick trim here on the fat side. There's not a lot. I don't really want to take any of this fat off because it's trimmed down nicely. What I do want to do though is I want to give this a quick sort of crosshatch score here. Not very deep. Just want to give this fat cap a chance to open up a bit, get some of that seasoning through there as it begins to cook. Also, it is a little bit dry, a little bit of moisture, but I want some more to help that rub hold. So I'm going to use some, listen to me pronounce it, Worcestershire sauce, Worcester sauce, Worcestershire sauce. Every time I say that, I get comments on people saying, you're saying it wrong. I know I'm saying it wrong. It's one of those or some variation. So let's get a little bit on here. Don't need much. And you might notice I'm doing this straight on my cutting board today. Usually when I'm doing a rub on a big rack of ribs, I'll put it in a tray, but this just looks so good. I don't want to put it in a metal tray right now. I just want it on this nice cutting board. We're not going to worry about seasoning the bone side, so we don't need to get any of this binder on that. I'm just going to give this a really good coating of our rub here on all sides as I make a mess on my cutting board. Let's get our edges here because we definitely want to get some good rub on this. Yeah, I know I could have put this in a shaker bottle, but you know, I don't always do that. You can see the bone side. There is a membrane, and on beef ribs, generally I don't take the membrane off because they really help hold this together. Beef ribs can get extremely tender and it could just fall apart when you get to that last stage of the cook. So it's worth having that membrane there. A little bit of extra work, but there's so much meat on these ribs that you're gonna hardly notice it at all. Some more in our fat cap here. That is looking good to me. Let's go outside, fire up the SnS Grills Kettle, and get these Wagyu beef ribs on. So the slow and sear is going. I'm using mesquite wood today, and I'm gonna add another chunk right on here. This one will just get us going. Now, as this is the first time using this SnS Grills Kettle for a cooking application, it's gonna take me a little bit of time to figure out exactly what the vent settings are, but I'm starting with them about half open on the bottom and about half open on the top. One of the nice features of this is the grate that comes with it has a wing that opens the entire size of the slow and sear. You can buy this as a package with the slow and sear. I already had a slow and sear, didn't need that, but this wider opening is really nice. I'm just gonna flip this back. Let's get our beef ribs out here and get them on. This side of these Wagyu beef ribs is a little bit thicker, so I'm putting that towards the heat source. All right, let's close this lid and get smoking. So the temperature I'm shooting for today is right around 250. As this is a new kettle, I'm gonna have to play with the vents. With the slow and sear on my Weber kettle, I've found that once you dial the vents in, you can get a 250 to 275 stable for a long time. But one thing to notice is the temperature gauge. You'll notice that it is mounted near the vent and lower. On a Weber kettle, it's going to be higher and opposite the vent. So if you have your temperature gauge directly over your fuel source and your vents over your food on indirect, you're going to get very high readings. So this is nice that it is generally on the side where you would have your food. I did a little testing during the burn-in and I found that the lid thermometer here was about 20 to 30 degrees lower than the grate level temp. So we'll see how that performs in an actual cooking environment today. Like I said, this is just sort of a preview and first cook on this. I'm not going into any detailed review. I need to cook more times on it to tell you how well it does. So I'm going to get these vents dialed in and we'll come back in a couple hours and check on these ribs. All right, we've been going 2 hours. The kettle temp has been holding in a range of 250 to 300. So let's have a look at these. And even though there is a lid holder built into this, I'm going to take this off so that we can get a better look all the way around. This is looking good. Got some pretty good bark development there, but still a lot of moisture. I just want to do a tenderness check and let's get a little temperature check. So I don't know if you can see that. That is showing 158. Let's check over here. That's 166. Like I said, we've got good development there, but I want that outer bark to develop a little bit more. So we're going to let this go another hour before we wrap it. So I'll bring you back in an hour. We'll give it a look. All right, we are 3 hours in. Time to look at these beef ribs, and we are definitely gonna wrap them now in a foil pan. Those are looking gorgeous. Definitely have a better bark than I had an hour ago. Let's get this into a foil pan with some liquid and a glaze. And I'm just gonna be using the side table that's on the SnS Grills, flips up and down. Gonna be handy for something like this. Want to get the lid back on to stop that oxygen flow because that fire is going to have to come down a little bit. First, I want to add just a little bit of beef broth to this pan. That's maybe half a cup. And now I want to put a little bit of a glaze on these beef ribs. And what I'm going to be using is a bourbon barrel-aged honey from Woodlife Ranch. I saw this, picked it up, it's fantastic. Now I know a lot of you don't like putting sauce or glazes on beef ribs. Sometimes I do. A little bit left on the spoon, gotta taste. If you're a honey fan, that stuff is great. All right, I just wanna brush this over the surface here and even get a little bit of the beef broth up on here. And I'm just gonna do a quick check here of tenderness and temperature. Still has resistance, so I know this has more time to go. Internal temperature there is 170, 168, 170. So it's the perfect time to wrap these. These will stall out just like a big hunk of beef because these are a big hunk of beef. I'm gonna seal this pan with 2 layers of foil. Let's get this back on the grill. All right, I'm gonna let this go for 90 minutes to 2 hours. Then I'll decide if I wanna let those ribs finish up just on the grill, unwrapped for maybe 30 minutes to tighten up. So I'll see you back here in 90 minutes to 2 hours. All right, we are 4.5 hours in. It's been 90 minutes in the foil. Time to check these Wagyu beef ribs. Oh, Oh, these look good. Want to do a tenderness check and a little bit of a temperature check too. Oh, much more tender. That is showing 199 degrees. This can take a little more temperature, which is good because I want to put this back on the cooking grate uncovered for about half an hour to finish up. But first, I want to put a little more glaze on this. Just a little more of this bourbon barrel aged honey. Oh, be careful here. Don't need a lot. All right, let's get this back on the grill to finish up. All right, let's go ahead and get the lid on. Let these finish for 30 minutes. I'll see you back here when it's time to take these Wagyu beef ribs off. All right, our Wagyu beef ribs have been on the grill uncovered for half an hour at the end, 5 hours total cook time. Let's take a final check because I'm pretty sure these are done. Yeah, I'd say those look pretty good. All right, I'm just gonna do a tenderness check here. Yeah, that's sliding through. All right, these are done. I'm gonna get these off of here, get them inside, let them rest, probably for about 20 minutes, and then we're gonna cut in. All right, here they are, our Wagyu Beef Short Ribs. Yes, these are short ribs, even though these are long. They come in a plate, and generally these are cut into smaller sections. This is like a larger plate of short ribs. Had great bark development on this, and I'm really glad I did that glaze. Now, you don't have to do a glaze. I know a lot of people do not want to put a glaze or sauce on beef ribs. You don't have to do that. I like to do it especially on short ribs. But right now, the only thing that's left to do is cut into these. Oh yeah, oh beautiful, nice and juicy. That looks so good. All right, let's cut one of these ribs for our tasting today. Oh yeah. Ah, this little piece fell off. Oh. Now I could just pick this up and go at it like a caveman, but I'm actually gonna cut some of this here for tasting. I'm actually just gonna go right along the bone here. Slice that off. And you still have some meat here on the sides of the bones. You can pull that off and eat that. You can see the membrane here held all this meat together. That's why I like leaving it on the bones for short ribs especially. I just wanna cut some pieces. This is still very hot after 20 minutes. I've said it many times, so have a lot of people. Beef ribs, to me especially short ribs, are like brisket on a stick. Super tender, super juicy when you get them just right like this. And I've never been more happy to say it's time to taste. So I'm just gonna go with one of these pieces here. See how we did. That super beefy flavor you get from Wagyu is really something special. Again, Wagyu beef is expensive. It's not something you're gonna eat every day. It's a treat. And that's the way I look at things like this. Now, Wagyu sent this to me, so I didn't have to pay for it, but I have bought Wagyu, and it is a treat. So if you're looking for a special meal or something like that, this would fit the bill. And I am getting a nice little taste of that honey that's aged in bourbon barrels right at the end there. I'm really glad I glazed these because that pepper in there, you do get the pepper, you want to mellow that a little bit. Otherwise, it's just going to be straight pepper on this ribs. So by adding the brown sugar, you cut that bite of the pepper a little bit, and this glaze does the same thing while still allowing the pepper flavor to come through. Now, as for the SnS Grills Kettle, this was my first cook on it. It worked great. I did learn a few things. One of them is it really doesn't take much airflow to maintain that 250 to 275 when the slow and sear is in there. There are 5 vent wings in the slow and sear kettle versus the Weber kettle, which has 3 vent wings. So you're getting more airflow if that's fully open. And so for about the first hour, I was playing with it and kind of learning to see how it would react. Was able to dial in that 275-ish range pretty good. It really ranged for me between 250 and about 290 in that first hour. But once I had it set to that, really, I had it dialed down to a third open or less on the bottom vent, and the top vent was a third open or less. So it really rocked a stable temperature with minimal airflow, which is something I really like. I'll talk more about the SnS Grills Kettle in future videos. Now, just to be clear, I bought that. They didn't send that to me. The Slow and Sear, David from SnS Grills, did send that to me a couple years ago, so I didn't have to go and buy that, and I've used the heck out of it. You've probably seen me use it in a lot of videos. It really does work in the slow sense best. That's what I find. You can sear on it, sure, but really the thing that it shines at is that long, slow cook. I've gotten 7 hours, I think a little over 7 hours of a good stable 275 out of it before. And I don't think there's gonna be any difference in the SnS Grills Kettle with that slow and sear in it. You're gonna get long cook times, and you're gonna get fantastic food. So that's the first cook on the SnS Grills Kettle, and I'm really glad I got to use some Wagyu beef from Wagyu. If you get a chance to cook Wagyu, whether it's from them or somewhere else, go for it. You'll get a great beefy, deep flavor and juiciness that just won't stop.